D&D gear. I've made videos on it in the past. D&D gear I wish I bought earlier. I reviewed every D&D item I owned. I bought the weirdest dice on the internet, and most recently I tested every official D&D product that came out this year. But what I have not done yet is look at the world's most famous DMs to see what D&D gear they use the most.
This is the rapid visual of what you see from that perspective.
This set is so cool.
Like nearly 9 foot stone, man.
2 angel guardians in the set.
Angels are the worst.
Starting with Brennan Lee Mulligan, followed up with Matt Mercer, because I most likely am going to use one of them for the clickbait in the thumbnail, a dice tray. Now hear me out. This is something I've spoken about before, but not for a while. Brennan Lee Mulligan uses a dice tray in his games and it heightens everything. But it's not the dice tray itself that makes this accessory so good, it's the way Brennan uses it. And the perception he has created around it. Brennan Lee Mulligan takes what is a standard dice tray, albeit an imposing one, then he only uses it for important roles and calls it the Box of Doom. Whenever the Box of Doom comes out, his players know this is going to be a life or death moment, and it heightens the atmosphere of the whole table. It is such a powerful tool, to say it is, once again, just a dice tray. And you can do this so easily by taking a dice tray or dice tower that has a unique look to it and only using it at pivotal points in your game. And in fact, the accessory itself is not even needed. Yeah, great first point, Phil, a video about D&D accessories, and the first one isn't really about an accessory, but it's true. You can get the same effect as Brennan Lee Mulligan's Box of Doom moments simply by stating that this is an important moment in your games and telling your players the DC to pass, telling them the consequences of what will happen if it fails, then rolling in front of them. The dice tray is not actually even needed, but it does help, like a lot. And since I promised Matt Mercer next, his D&D accessory is Area of Effect Measurers and Condition Rings. That's right, 2 for the price of 1. And both these are tied into battle map play, and both are used to make combat move faster and be less confusing. Matt uses Area of Effect Measurers all the time to quickly figure out what he can hit. And these can come as circles, cubes, and even cones depending on the attack. And his players can use these too when deciding what to do before they go. It may only shave off a handful of seconds off someone's turn using one of these rather than just counting some squares, but honestly, in a game where combat can be a bit of a slog, seconds add up. And if all your players use these, the seconds would add up to minutes pretty fast. And in a campaign that lasts you years, using these could save you hours. And in that same vein, Matt also uses condition rings often to keep track of what characters are afflicted by what. This is especially useful in high level play, where you have some people paralyzed, others frightened or charmed, and others just taking a nap. This also allows everyone at the table to more quickly see who is a viable target on the mat, and saves the time wasted of other players saying, no, don't go for that guy, he's sleeping. Or me, the DM, moving someone and attacking a player character for that player to say 3 rounds later, wait, wasn't that guy stunned? And it is this point in the video that I tell you that things start to go horribly wrong. Because, well, you tell me if you notice something all the following gear has in common. So for Matt's Area of Effect Measurers and Condition Rings to work, we need some kind of battle map. Well, that's where Deborah Ann Wall comes into play with her accessory, the Wet Erase Grid. I spoke about this in my last video as a way of quickly drawing out maps on the fly in both combat and out of combat, meaning you get to be an incredibly reactive DM, not relying on big battle mat sets that take a while to put together.
How far is the play close? Should we map?
10 feet. We can map if you want.
Ooh.
So, the attic is fairly small.
But the wet erase map that allows you to easily draw and erase things at will is so much more powerful than I originally thought. With you not just being able to draw combat maps or maps of puzzles or towns or even continents if you wanted, but also you being able to spell out names of NPCs when players ask you to repeat it for the 15th time, or for you to write down riddles for your players, or literally anything. You can literally write or draw anything. It's just an added visual communication that allows you or your players to get information across quickly and effectively. Of all the accessories in this video, this is the most useful as it can be used for so much. And even if you wanted to use terrain and minis, then you can still use this as a base. Throw some trees on here, some rocks, and draw some walls, maybe place a whole building, and you're good to go. But now, if we wanted to take this to the next level, we can look at a Bria Irongar's accessory, which is dungeon tiles. Dungeon tiles are so useful on so many levels. They add texture to your battle maps, they immerse your players, and they obviously add walls and variation. This all stops your combat from getting stale. You can also pull them apart and put them back together for endless possibilities, and some DMs find it actually very therapeutic to sit down and create cool maps using these. I use Warlock tiles in my games, but seeing what other DMs use, Dwarven Forge tiles seem to be a fan favourite as well. However, you can make dungeon tiles even better by using things like terrain and risers. The dungeon dudes use these really well. Trees, rocks, furniture all make combat in particular much more dynamic. And risers are just useful to add elevation to your games, allowing flying characters or creatures to actually hover above the map. It's also obviously useful just to keep track of who is flying and who is not, like the way Matthew Mercer uses condition rings. Having your map littered with terrain pieces and having things flying over it all is also just visually really cool. And this increases engagement from players because it's a world they want to immerse themselves in more. And obviously, how do you do any of these without miniatures? A DM and player's best friend of an accessory. I'm going to use the DM Mark Humes as an example here, but like all the other points in this video, a lot of these accessories are used by most of the DMs, if not all of them. But just look at this map littered with minis. Mark is known for using minis to portray NPCs in danger, not just for players, NPCs part of the party, or bad guys. This is an easy one because not only are minis needed for a lot of other accessories in this video to be viable in any way, shape or form, I mean try using condition rings without minis, but they're also just really good for immersing your players more too. Not into the world, but into their characters. Your players can jump on something like Hero Forge and create custom minis exactly the way they want them to look, which is really cool as an exercise in itself to let the players really get to imagine their characters, as well as giving them a real sense of ownership and connection to them. I would like to see someone do this study, but my theory is that players care a lot more about whether their character lives or dies when they're looking at a physical representation of said character surrounded by enemies on a battle map.
We got our minis. We got our minis.
We're children.
Okay, so Phil from the future here, and I was just editing the video and this arrived. And I'm presuming that this is a big package from WizKids because they said they were going to send some minis over to me, which is really, really nice. So I figured I would do a quick unboxing. Now, I am presuming this is from WizKids. It's divorce papers. No, it's not. I'm just kidding. It is, looks like 2 big minis, and they sent over this huge toy for the cats. Icons of the Realms, Froghemoth Elder. Wow. This guy's great. Oh my god, he's kind of derpy looking in the best possible way. How cool is that? I don't have any minis this big. And next up is a red ghost dragon. That's so cool. Oh, he's a beautiful ghost dragon. And this I'm just gonna use for like every kind of dragon. It's kind of a placeholder. Let me go show them to my wife. Now, obviously having minis is very nice, but you'll never always have the perfect minis for every situation, unless your players only fight the same monsters over and over again. So it's recommended to have a few minis of every size of creature. At least a few different minis in the small, medium, and large categories. Though you may want to go bigger if you're running a higher level campaign. Then you can use them to literally represent anything. A red dragon mini could be a black dragon mini, or a giant bird, or an airship. It can be used to represent anything of roughly that size. You have a selection of orc minis. Well, in this encounter, this one with the axe is an elf, this one with a cape is a Goliath, and this green blobby thing is actually a blue blobby thing. One mini can go a really long way. The trick is to make sure you note down what each mini represents, because it can get confusing in combat with lots of minis representing different things. And you can do this by just noting down on your initiative tracker in brackets something like Bandit A, green blob, Bandit B, axe, Bandit Captain, cape. You can come up with your own shorthand for this. It really is just so that you, the DM, know what each mini represents. And it will make things much easier to keep track of. And if you thought I was scraping the bottom of the barrel when I said minis were great accessories for DMs, obviously, then you really won't like this one. But it does get better, I swear. DM Jasmine Bueller uses a DM screen. Now hear me out, let him finish. You see, I almost did not put a DM screen in this list as one of the best accessories used by DMs because I actually think it's really not needed at all and it's so basic. A lot of DMs nowadays are working on laptops that do the same thing. Also, rolling all your rolls in the open is just epic in my opinion. However, I do think the DM screen has one more saving grace. Well, 2 actually. The first is that it does give you as a DM a level of authority. It separates you from the players, and to be blunt, It reminds them who is in charge. It's you, the DM, you're in charge. The second thing it does is allows the DM to hide minis, terrain, and other accessories behind it, which I've never really thought too much about before, but recently I've been watching a bunch of actual plays where the DM brings out minis from behind the DM screen and the whole table is in awe. Saying a dragon swoops down on a party, then pulling out a mini of a red dragon from behind your DM screen is a moment your players will never forget. And I did mention this in one of my last videos, but Jasmine Bueller does have a really cool way of making full battle maps out of little pieces of walls and terrain, so she can literally keep so much stuff behind her DM screen to pull out when she needs it. Also, DM screens are just iconic to D&D. Sure, maybe you don't need one, but come on, it's D&D. Okay, let's get a little further away from battle map sets, though this next item could be used as one of those too, as well as for literally anything else. In Geek and Sundry's D&D show, Amy Vorpal as DM has a monitor built into the table. And I've seen a bunch of DMs use monitors like this. In fact, Power Word Spill has a phenomenal video where he teaches you how to build a monitor into your DM screen. And screens like this can be used to show illustrations and images that can be educational or just atmospheric. They can be used to display initiative orders or maps. Whatever you can pull up on a computer, you can pull up on one of these. And it's one of the only things in this list that I don't own myself, but I am aware it's very, very cool. And if you are a DM or have players that love visuals, then using a monitor like this in some way will get you a lot of mileage. Next up, I want to talk about Brian Murphy, whose D&D accessories are monster books. Brian has spoken about in the past how he will just flick through a book like Tome of Beasts from Kobold Press, a book full of monsters and stat blocks, and then this would inspire not just combat encounters, but entire adventures. One extra thing Matt Mercer has talked about using a lot as well, since I forgot to talk about it when I was talking about Matt, is this stuff. In the UK we call it blue tack, but here it's called adhesive sticky tack putty. I guess blue tack is just a brand name the same way we call vacuum cleaners Hoovers and washing up liquid Fairy Liquid. And yet I always laugh when I hear someone over here in North America call all tissues Kleenex. Anyway, adhesive sticky tack putty. It's just little putty that is sticky. It's great for throwing on minis and terrain just to make it stick to things. So if you had a mini that you wanted to stick to terrain, like this dice to this box, I can just put the putty on here, then put the dice on here, and it sticks. And the best thing is, it comes off and it doesn't leave a mark at all. You just have the putty that you can reuse. Also, if you wanted an extended version of the unboxing of those minis, or a cut-out section of this video where I talk about the most used accessories in my games currently, then they're up on Patreon right now. I try to cut out a lot in these videos to keep things snappy, but sometimes it's good stuff. So I'm just gonna throw that up on my Patreon from now on. And if you don't want a Patreon, all good, just make sure to subscribe. Only 7% of my viewers are subscribed, meaning you're either hate watching or you simply want to hurt my feelings, which is also allowed, I guess, like it's legal. Which brings me to my next D&D accessory that I think is massively underrated. Props. From sock puppets to veils that help you embody an NPC, to in real life health potions and decks of cards that your players can use both out and inside of the game. Anything can be a D&D prop, as long as it immerses your players or yourself into your session more. I've heard of DMs handing out really old maps, or putting up the players' characters' wanted posters on the wall. Even people matching food and drink from the outside world with the food and drink in the inside D&D world. And I even count smart light bulbs and projectors and things like that. Just any kind of equipment that will do something that will help your players get immersed. Sure, it's a catch-all category, so that I can just throw everything I've not mentioned in this video into here. Yes, D&D props can be absolutely anything, and I would love to hear about some of the props that you've seen or used in the comments. But the reality is that these things, for me, are the next level of D&D. I'm not saying that people have to use them. If you're a DM, don't feel like you ever have to use any of these things. But as DMs, we often emulate what kind of DM we would want if we were a player. And to me, a DM that was handing out maps and props and things for me to physically play with at the table is just phenomenal. Oh, and my best prop, by the way, that I've ever used, I stole from Daggerheart, which is a map I just printed out for my campaign that I've just started. And I asked my players to go around and write one place where they're from on this map. They would create their hometown or region or a random area, and we'll add it to this map and it becomes canon. And we've started in a small region, in a small town. We've built up a few cities around it, but as the game goes on and the players explore more areas of this map, we're gonna slowly fill it in together. It's truly collaborative world building. And honestly, I mean, it's not much to look at, but this is a prop that I'm probably going to like stick on my fridge and have long term because this is a world me and my friends created together. And I thought I would do a quick rundown of the basics. A lot of this may seem obvious, but there are some useful things in here. It's a speed run. I see a lot of pro DMs using notepads. For some people it's easier to write than type, especially if you're just noting down little numbers or reminders for yourself. Laptops or iPads are also highly used. Most pro DMs use something like this nowadays to look at character sheets, campaign notes, look up rules and spells, as well as controlling music and even lighting. Pens, lots and lots of pens. 2D printers for printing out maps and props and useful tracking sheets. 3D printers, something I really want to get in on in the future, for printing terrain and even minis and anything else you can think of. 4D printers, I'm just kidding, I don't actually even know what a 4D printer would be. I guess it would print smells. Maybe? Gaming tables. Lots of pro DMs have their own specially made tables, but there's no reason you can't just play on your floor. And dice. Dice is a big one. But my point of listing all these off is that there's a lot of items you can use in D&D, but none of them are necessary. And while you can be inspired by pro DMs, while you can learn from them, you should not think that the way they play is the only way to play. And if there are any comments below criticizing this video saying the same exact thing, we know it's because they didn't watch the whole video. Shame on those commenters, because I agree with you. However, seeing how the professional DM DMs at their table with a seemingly unlimited budget and an art department and 40 hours a week to spare can still help you figure out the easiest way for you to play and the way you would like to play, you know, in a perfect world. And then you can find some kind of achievable middle ground somewhere in there. And if you remember, I said that most of this gear has something in common and that it is a problem, and I'll flash back to it. And it is this point in the video that I tell you that things start to go horribly wrong. You tell me if you notice something all the following gear has in common. Well, the majority of this gear is combat related, which is an issue for me because the majority of the time I am DMing, I'm not in combat. And whatever it says about D&D in general, that the most useful gear is there to make combat easier, I still like to make the rest of my playtime and prep time easier too. So I'm working on a similar video to this one right now, but about digital tools. Non-physical tools that make prepping and managing games easier, which should come out soon. Meanwhile, check out this video where I talk about the way D&D DMs use battle mats and terrain. Thanks for watching.